If your mind has been louder than your life lately, if you feel tired from thinking too much, worrying too much, and carrying emotions that were never meant for you, then this video is exactly what you need. Because the truth is simple. You're not suffering from reality, you're suffering from the stories your mind keeps repeating. Overthinking has turned small moments into big problems and simple days into heavy ones. But Buddhism teaches something beautifully freeing. The mind can be trained, the noise can be softened, the storms can be calmed, and the peace you keep searching for is already inside you, waiting for you to return to it. Today, you'll learn Buddhist lessons that will help you stop overthinking, release the weight you've been carrying, and finally start living with a mind that feels light, steady, and deeply peaceful. 1. Your mind is a storyteller, not a prophet. Most of the pain you experience in life doesn't come from what is actually happening around you. It comes from the stories your mind creates about what might happen, what could happen, or what already happened. Your mind is constantly trying to protect you by predicting danger. But in that process, it often invents problems that aren't real. You might wake up and feel anxious about a message someone hasn't replied to, and instantly the mind writes a whole story. They're upset with you, you did something wrong, something bad will happen. None of this is reality. It's just imagination dressed as truth. The mind exaggerates small things and turns them into big threats. It creates scenes of betrayal, disaster, loss, embarrassment, or rejection long before anything actually occurs. And because your mind speaks in your own voice, you believe it. You don't question the story, you just accept it. This is how overthinking begins, not with reality, but with the mind's interpretation of reality. Buddhism teaches that thoughts are like clouds crossing the sky. They appear for a moment, but they were never meant to stay. They come and go, but the sky, your true self, remains calm, open, and unchanged. The problem starts when you mistake the cloud for the sky. When you believe every thought as if it were a fact, you lose your peace. The next time a fearful thought appears, don't immediately ask yourself, is this true? Because most thoughts have some mixture of truth and fear. Instead, ask, is this helpful? This simple question changes everything. If a thought makes you panic, shrink, or doubt yourself, it is not helpful. It is just noise. And noise becomes suffering only when you listen to it. A thought has zero power until you give it your attention. The moment you feed it with fear, emotion, or constant replaying, it grows stronger. But the moment you treat it like a temporary visitor, something that enters and exits, it loses the ability to control you. Imagine sitting beside a peaceful river. Your thoughts are leaves floating on the water. Your only job is to watch them drift by. You don't jump into the river and chase every leaf. You don't grab one and examine it for hours. You don't argue with it or try to push it away. You simply let it pass. This is how you must treat your thoughts. Let them flow, let them move, let them change shape and disappear on their own. The more you try to control your thoughts, the louder they become. But the more you allow them to pass without reaction, the quieter your mind becomes. Over time, you develop a new kind of strength, the ability to see thoughts without becoming them. When you stop giving power to your mind's stories, you reclaim your peace. And when your mind becomes quiet, you start living in the truth, not in the illusions your thoughts create. 2. Worrying does not protect you, it weakens you. Most people believe that worrying is a form of preparation, a way to stay ready so they don't get hurt. But the truth is the opposite. Worrying does not make you stronger. It drains you long before life even tests you. The mind convinces you that overthinking every possibility will keep you safe. But what it actually does is exhaust your body, weaken your spirit, and blind you to the present moment. Buddhism teaches that worry is the mind trying to live in a future that hasn't happened yet. And because that future is unknown, the mind fills it with fear. You imagine failure before you even try. You imagine loss before anything is gone. You imagine negative outcomes even when life is peaceful. The mind creates a storm inside you while the outside world is completely calm. Think about how many things you have worried about in the past that never actually happened. How many times did you lose sleep over situations that resolved themselves quietly? How many times did you stress over conversations that turned out fine? How many times did you fear the worst, only to realize it was your own mind creating unnecessary suffering? This is the nature of worry. It makes you live the pain twice, once in your imagination and once in real life, if it even happens at all. The problem is that your mind believes worrying equals control. It's almost like a ritual. If I think about everything that can go wrong, maybe I can stop it. But worrying does not change the future. It only destroys your peace in the present. It makes you tired, distracted, and emotionally overwhelmed. And when you're overwhelmed, you actually make worse decisions, not better ones. So the thing you think is protecting you is actually weakening you. A worried mind can't see clearly. It jumps to conclusions, misreads situations, and assumes danger where there is none. Worrying creates a fog around your awareness, making small issues seem huge and harmless situations look threatening. It's like wearing glasses that distort everything you see. Buddhism teaches that the first step to letting go of worry is recognizing that fear and reality are not the same. When a fearful thought appears, ask yourself, is this a real danger, or is this just my mind imagining something? Most of the time, you'll realize that your fear is not based on facts, it's based on assumptions. Just like a shadow looks bigger than the object that creates it, your fears often look bigger than the actual situation. When you stop feeding the shadow with attention, it shrinks. You cannot prevent uncertainty, but you can choose not to suffer before anything happens. You can prepare for life with calm awareness instead of anxious overthinking. You can show up with strength instead of stress. You can respond instead of react. When you stop believing that worry keeps you safe, you discover something powerful. Life becomes easier, your mind becomes clearer, your heart becomes lighter, and for the first time, in a long time, you feel free. 3. The present moment is the only safe place. Overthinking is the mind's way of escaping the present moment. It pulls you into the past, where you replay mistakes, regrets, and old conversations. Or it pushes you into the future, where you worry about things that haven't happened yet. This constant mental time traveling makes life feel heavier than it really is. But the truth is simple. The present moment is the only place where life is happening, and it is the only place where you can find peace. Buddhism teaches that the present is like solid ground, while the past and future are like clouds, you cannot stand on them. The past is gone, the future does not exist yet, but your mind keeps trying to live in these imaginary spaces, and that's why you feel tired, anxious, or lost. You're trying to hold on to moments that no longer exist and control moments that haven't arrived. Think about this. In the exact moment you are reading this sentence, you are safe. Your breath is steady. Your heart is beating. Nothing is attacking you. Nothing is falling apart. Nothing is demanding your attention. But your mind, if left uncontrolled, will still whisper, something might go wrong. And suddenly the peace that was already there disappears, not because something happened, but because your mind wandered away from the now. The present moment has a quiet power. It doesn't shout for attention, it simply waits for you to return. Your senses exist only in the present. Your breath exists only in the present. Peace exists only in the present. When you train your mind to come back to what is happening right now, you begin to experience life as it truly is, not as your fears or memories paint it to be. Most people never fully experience a single moment of their life. They eat while checking their phone, they walk while thinking about the future, they talk while replaying the past. Their body is here, but their mind is somewhere else entirely. This split creates suffering because the mind and body are no longer working together. When you bring your mind back to the present, even simple things become more peaceful. Eating becomes calming. Walking becomes grounding. Breathing becomes healing. You start to feel the world instead of thinking about it. A simple way to return to the present moment is by noticing your breath. The breath is the bridge between your mind and your body. When the mind tries to run away, the breath gently pulls it back. When you take one slow, deep breath, you create space between you and your thoughts. You give your nervous system time to relax. You remind yourself that nothing is wrong right now. You can practice presence by using your senses. Notice the feeling of your feet touching the floor. Notice the sound in the room. Notice the temperature of the air on your skin. Notice the rise and fall of your chest. These simple awareness moments bring your mind back home. When you stay in the present moment, you stop drowning in imaginary fears. You stop carrying the weight of yesterday. You stop suffering from problems that do not exist. You begin to see life clearly, calmly, and truthfully. You realize you don't need to escape your mind. You just need to bring it back to where life is actually happening. The more you practice returning to the present, the less overthinking controls you. Life becomes lighter, decisions become clearer, emotions become easier to manage, and your inner world becomes a place of peace instead of chaos. The present moment is not just a place, it is your refuge, it is your anchor, it is your doorway to peace. Patru. You don't need control, you need trust. One of the greatest sources of overthinking and inner suffering is the belief that you must control everything, every outcome, every person, every emotion, every situation. You try to control how people see you, how life unfolds, how the future plays out, and how the world responds to your actions. This constant pressure creates a never-ending cycle of fear, anxiety, and mental exhaustion. The more you try to control life, the more life resists. The more tightly you hold on, the more things slip through your fingers. Buddhism teaches that control is an illusion. You cannot control the actions of others. You cannot stop change. You cannot force outcomes. You cannot rewrite what has already happened. Life was never designed to obey your expectations. Life is movement, flow, and constant transformation. When you fight that movement, you suffer. When you trust it, you become free. Most overthinking comes from the fear of uncertainty. The mind wants guarantees. It wants to know the end before the beginning. It wants to predict every step and every result. But life gives no guarantees. And that is why the mind panics. It tries to create safety through thinking, planning, imagining, worrying, and overanalyzing every detail. But thinking more does not create certainty. It only creates stress. Imagine someone standing in a river trying to stop the current with their hands. They push, they fight, they struggle, but the water keeps moving. Eventually, they become tired, overwhelmed, and frustrated. This is what it's like to try to control life. You are fighting a river that was never meant to be controlled, only navigated. Trust is the opposite of control. Trust does not mean you become passive or careless. Trust means you understand that the universe is wiser than your fear. It means you allow life to unfold without forcing it. It means you let go of the belief that everything must happen exactly the way you picture it. Trust is breathing, even when the path ahead is unclear. Trust is moving forward, even when you don't have all the answers. Trust is believing that whatever happens, you will find a way to grow from it. When you shift from control to trust, something incredible happens. You stop fighting your own life. You allow space for new possibilities. You become flexible instead of rigid, peaceful instead of stressed, open instead of tense. Things that once scared you stop feeling like threats. Challenges become lessons instead of punishments. Delays become protection instead of bad luck. Think about your past. How many times did things not go as planned, but later you realized they led you somewhere better? How many times did a wrong turn save you? How many times did something fall apart, only to reveal something more meaningful behind it? Life has been guiding you quietly, even when you didn't trust it. You have survived everything you once feared. You have overcome challenges you thought would break you. You have experienced moments of grace, luck, synchronicity, and unexpected blessings. None of that came from control. It came from trust. Life becomes lighter when you understand this truth. You don't need to control everything to be safe. You only need to trust yourself, trust the process, and trust that life is not working against you. Letting go of control doesn't mean giving up. It means giving up the illusion that your fear can shape reality. It means surrendering your anxiety, not your effort. It means allowing life to breathe. The more you let go, the more life flows. The more you trust, the quieter your mind becomes. And the quieter your mind becomes, the more peace you find, because peace was never in control, it was always in surrender. 5. Let go of what you cannot change. Overthinking often begins with a simple truth that the mind refuses to accept. Some things are outside your control, but instead of allowing those things to be, the mind keeps trying to fix them, rewrite them, understand them, or force them to become different. This creates endless suffering. You replay conversations that already happened. You analyze decisions you've already made. You worry about things you cannot predict. You try to control people who have their own thoughts, feelings, and journeys. And the more you hold on to what lies outside your power, the heavier life feels. Buddhism teaches that suffering is created not by life itself, but by the mind's resistance to reality. When you cling to what cannot be changed, you fight a battle that has no victory. The past cannot be edited. The future cannot be guaranteed. Other people cannot be shaped like clay. Life does not bend simply because you want it to, but still the mind tries, because the mind believes that if it holds on tightly enough, it will eventually create the outcome it desires. This belief is what traps you in the cycle of overthinking. Letting go is not about giving up. It is not about being weak. It is not about pretending everything is okay. Letting go is choosing to free yourself from unnecessary suffering. It is choosing to stop pouring your energy into things that drain you. It is choosing peace over control, healing over forcing, clarity over emotional chaos. Think about how much emotional weight you carry simply because you refuse to release something that no longer belongs in your hands. Maybe it's a mistake you made in the past. Maybe it's a person who walked away. Maybe it's an opportunity you missed. Maybe it's a situation that unfolded in a way you didn't expect. You keep revisiting these moments as if thinking about them will somehow change them. But the past is a closed door. No amount of knocking will open it again. Letting go means accepting that what happened has already served its purpose. It taught you something. It shaped you. It redirected you. It guided you. But it is not meant to follow you forever. Pain becomes heavier when you carry it longer than necessary. Sometimes, letting go also means walking away from expectations that never came true. You had dreams about how life should look, and when reality didn't match the picture in your head, your mind created disappointment. This disappointment then became overthinking, regret, fear, self-doubt, and emotional exhaustion. But the truth is, expectations are not reality. They are only ideas. And ideas are flexible, they can change. Letting go means understanding that peace is never found in trying to control outcomes. It is found in accepting life as it is in this moment. Not the life you wanted, not the life you imagined, but the life that is unfolding right now, with real lessons, real opportunities, and real moments of beauty. Another important part of letting go is realizing that people are on their own paths. You cannot change their hearts. You cannot force them to understand you, love you, or stay with you. If someone leaves, let them walk. If someone misunderstands you, explain what you can and release the rest. If someone chooses a different direction, bless them silently and continue yours. Clinging to people who have emotionally let go is one of the heaviest forms of suffering. Letting go does not mean there is no pain. It means the pain finally has space to breathe and transform. When you let go, your mind becomes lighter, your heart becomes softer, your nervous system calms down. You stop waking up tired from yesterday's thinking. You stop fighting battles that don't belong to you. Letting go is a decision you make again and again. A decision to release what you cannot control. A decision to accept what you cannot change. A decision to choose inner peace over mental struggle. A decision to stop trying to carry the whole world on your shoulders. And the beautiful part? When you let go of what drains you, you suddenly have space for what heals you. You make room for new clarity, new courage, new joy, and new versions of yourself that your old worries were blocking. You discover that the peace you were searching for was never lost. It was simply hidden under everything you refused to release. Letting go is not the end of something. It is the beginning of your freedom. 6. Your peace is more important than being right. One of the hidden reasons people overthink is because they replay arguments, misunderstandings, or emotional conflicts in their mind long after the moment has passed. The mind becomes obsessed with finding the perfect response, explaining itself, proving a point, defending something, or imagining a better outcome. It replays the same conversation over and over again, trying to rewrite what has already happened. But this mental habit does not bring peace. It brings exhaustion. And the deeper truth is this: wanting to be right can cost you your inner peace, while choosing peace can save your entire life. Buddhism teaches that the ego is the part of you that wants to win every argument, wants to be understood perfectly, wants others to see your goodness, and wants to control the narrative. The ego hates to be misunderstood, hates to feel wrong, and hates when someone sees you unfairly. But when you live from the ego, you live in constant tension. The ego is never satisfied, because it always feels threatened. It always wants more validation. It always wants more proof. It always wants to clear your name, correct someone's view, or fix their misunderstanding. And the more you let the ego run your mind, the more your peace disappears. A peaceful mind does not need to win every fight. It does not need to correct every lie. It does not need to fix every misunderstanding. It does not need to convince every person. A peaceful mind understands something deeper, something that takes maturity to accept. Not every battle deserves your energy, not every comment deserves your reaction, and not every situation deserves your presence. People often lose sleep not because of the problem itself, but because they cannot let go of the emotional tension behind it. You replay the insult someone threw at you. You rehearse the comeback you should have said. You imagine how things could have gone differently. You torture yourself with thoughts like, why did they say that? What did they mean? Why are they acting like this? I should have defended myself. I should have responded better. I should have stood up for myself. But none of this changes what happened. It only extends your suffering. Your peace is too valuable to trade for moments that don't matter. Imagine two fires burning in front of you. One is the fire of ego, the desire to be right, to win, to dominate, to prove your intelligence, to show your strength. The other fire is the fire of peace, the desire to stay calm, stay grounded, and stay connected to your inner self. Every time you react emotionally to negativity, every time you argue unnecessarily, every time you defend yourself when silence is wiser, you are feeding the wrong fire. You are burning your energy, burning your clarity, burning your strength, not because the situation required it, but because the ego demanded it. A wise person learns to stop feeding the fire that destroys their peace. Letting go of the need to be right does not mean you are weak. It means you are wise. It means you understand that your mental health is worth more than winning an argument. It means you are strong enough to walk away from what tries to drag you down. It means you don't let external noise affect your internal world. It means you value your inner calm over temporary satisfaction. There are people in this world who misunderstand everything. There are people who will twist your words, judge you without knowing you, criticize you out of their own pain, or compete with you out of their own insecurity. You cannot fix them. You cannot change them. You cannot force them to think differently, and you do not need to. Their perception belongs to them, not to you. The only thing that belongs to you is your state of mind. It is a sign of emotional maturity when you can listen to someone disagree with you without feeling the need to fight. It is a sign of inner strength when you can walk away from unnecessary conflict without feeling defeated. It is a sign of spiritual growth when you choose silence over arguments, distance over drama, and peace over proving anything. Sometimes, the best response is no response. Silence is not a sign that you have nothing to say. Silence is a sign that you value what you have, to lose your peace, your stability, your inner balance. You cannot control how people act, but you can control how you respond. And sometimes the wisest response is simply to let things be. Think about how many arguments you avoided that later turned out to be meaningless. Think about how many negative reactions you saved yourself from by staying silent. Think about how often walking away protected your peace far more than winning ever could. Your mind becomes calmer when you realize you don't need to participate in every emotional invitation. Not every comment is meant to be answered. Not every insult needs a reply. Not every situation needs your presence. When you choose peace instead of reacting, you are not losing, you are preserving. Overthinking usually begins after conflict because your mind is trying to process everything again and again. It wants to go back and fix what happened. But the truth is, nothing needs fixing except your perspective. If something is already done, let it rest. If someone misunderstood you, let them think what they want. If someone disrespected you, let life handle them. What people say about you does not define you. What you repeat in your mind does. You start healing the moment you stop arguing with the past. You start calming your mind the moment you stop fighting for unnecessary victories. You start finding clarity the moment you stop letting small things disturb your inner world. And you start living in peace the moment you understand this simple but life-changing truth. Your peace is your power. Guard it fiercely, protect it ruthlessly, value it above your ego. The more you learn to let go of the need to be right, the more your mind becomes quiet. The more quiet your mind becomes, the more clearly you can see. And the more clearly you can see, the less you will suffer. In the end, peace is not given, it is chosen. It is chosen in every moment where your ego wants to fight, but your soul wants to rest. It is chosen in every situation where you feel the urge to react, but you choose to stay calm. It is chosen in every misunderstanding where you decide that your mental health matters more than proving a point. Peace is something you build through thousands of small, quiet decisions. When you choose peace over being right, you stop living from the ego and start living from wisdom. And in that shift, your entire life begins to transform. Your anxiety decreases, your mind becomes clearer, your relationships become healthier, your heart feels lighter, your soul becomes steady. Your peace is more important than any momentary feeling of victory. Let the world think what it wants. Let people say what they want. Let the ego scream if it must. Just don't let anything steal the quiet space inside you. That quiet space is your true home. Protect it. 7. Slow down. Life becomes clearer when you stop rushing. Most people don't realize this, but a huge part of overthinking comes from living life too fast. When your mind is racing, your thoughts begin to multiply uncontrollably. When your schedule is packed, your emotions start piling up without processing. When you move from one thing to the next without a pause, your mind loses the ability to breathe, to observe, to reflect, and to understand. This creates a mental environment where stress grows like weeds, where small problems become overwhelming, and where peace becomes impossible. Slowing down is not simply a relaxing idea, it is a survival skill. It is a spiritual discipline. It is a way of protecting your mind from drowning in its own noise. In Buddhism, the root of suffering is not in the world outside, but in the speed of the mind inside. When the mind rushes, it becomes chaotic. When it becomes chaotic, it becomes fearful. And when it becomes fearful, it begins to imagine danger, even where there is none. The mind believes that moving faster will solve everything, but in reality, the faster you go, the more blind you become. Life becomes a blur. Important details disappear. Simple joys get ignored. Emotions get suppressed. You begin reacting instead of responding. You start living on autopilot, disconnected from yourself, disconnected from others, and disconnected from the present moment that holds all the clarity you seek. Slowing down does not mean doing less, it means doing things with awareness. It means breathing between actions. It means allowing your mind to fully experience what is happening instead of constantly jumping to the next moment. When you slow down, you give yourself time to notice what your mind is doing. You notice the thought patterns that create anxiety. You notice the emotional triggers that make you rush. You notice the fear underneath your busyness. And with this awareness, you begin to regain control of your inner world. Think about how much of your life you rush through without realizing. You eat quickly without tasting your food. You walk quickly without feeling your steps. You talk quickly without listening. You react quickly without understanding. You make decisions quickly without thinking them through. And then later, you wonder why you feel empty, stressed, or lost. Life is not meant to be a race. It is meant to be lived with presence, intention, and depth. When you slow down, even ordinary moments become profound. Eating becomes a meditation. Walking becomes grounding. Talking becomes connection. Breathing becomes healing. When you move slowly, you begin to see life as it truly is. You begin to notice the beauty you used to overlook the sunlight coming through the window, the sound of leaves moving in the wind, the warmth of your own breath, the quiet rhythm of your heartbeat. These small things, when noticed, bring calmness. They bring gratitude. They bring peace. But they only appear when the mind slows down enough to see them. Rushing is often a symptom of fear. You rush because you feel behind. You rush because you fear missing out. You rush because you try to outrun your insecurities. You rush because you feel pressure to prove something. You rush because silence feels uncomfortable. You rush because movement distracts you from your inner world. But the faster you run, the more disconnected you become. At some point, life stops feeling like something you are living and starts feeling like something you are escaping from. Slowing down forces you to face yourself, your emotions, your thoughts, your truth. And although that may feel uncomfortable at first, it is the only way to heal. When you slow down, suppressed emotions surface gently instead of erupting violently. When you slow down, thoughts lose their intensity and become easier to manage. When you slow down, problems become clearer and solutions become visible. Imagine a glass of muddy water. If you shake it, the water becomes cloudy. You cannot see through it. But if you place the glass down and leave it undisturbed, the mud slowly sinks to the bottom and the water becomes clear. Your mind works the same way. Rushing is shaking the glass. Slowing down is letting the mud settle. When your mind slows, clarity returns, insight returns, wisdom returns, peace returns. Slowing down also helps you make better decisions. When you move too fast, you act from anxiety, impulse, or fear. You speak before thinking, commit before reflecting, agree before understanding, or react before processing. You end up creating more problems than you solve. But when you slow down, you create space between your thoughts and your reactions. That space is where true wisdom lives. In that space, you can choose patience over anger, understanding over judgment, silence over unnecessary conflict, compassion over ego, and peace over impulse. Many people think their life is stressful because of their responsibilities, but often the real reason is the speed at which they carry those responsibilities. Even heavy tasks become manageable when done slowly and intentionally, while even simple tasks become overwhelming when rushed. Slowing down is not laziness, it is intelligence, it is emotional maturity, it is self-respect. Another painful truth is that many people rush through life because they don't feel safe slowing down. Silence makes them uneasy, stillness makes them restless. The present moment feels too vulnerable. They fill every moment with noise, distraction, or activity because slowing down forces them to feel emotions they've been avoiding. But avoidance is not peace. Avoidance is temporary relief that becomes long-term suffering. When you slow down, you give your heart the chance to heal instead of suppress. You let the pain surface so it can leave you, instead of staying buried in your mind. When you slow down, your relationships improve too. You start listening more deeply, you respond more thoughtfully, you understand others more clearly. You stop projecting your anxieties onto people. You stop rushing conversations, rushing emotions, rushing conflicts. You start seeing people as human beings, not obstacles or tasks. Slowing down strengthens connection with yourself and with others. The truth is, life is already short. Yet most people shorten it even more by rushing through it, never truly experiencing its depth. Slowing down allows you to live more fully, not less. It allows you to experience time instead of chasing it. It allows you to feel alive instead of feeling trapped. Slowing down brings you back to your natural state, a state of calm awareness, inner balance, and gentle clarity. It reminds you that you are allowed to pause, you are allowed to rest, you are allowed to breathe, you are allowed to take your time, you are allowed to live at your own pace. You don't owe speed to anyone, you don't owe urgency to anyone, you don't need to rush to prove your worth. A peaceful life is not achieved through speed, control, or pressure. It is achieved through awareness, presence, and patience. When you slow down, you give yourself permission to exist without constantly performing, achieving, or chasing. You give yourself permission to be human. And perhaps the greatest gift of slowing down is this: the more you slow down, the less your mind overthinks. The quieter your mind becomes, the more clearly you can see your path. The more clearly you can see your path, the more confidently you can walk it. Slowing down doesn't make you weak, it makes you wise. It makes you patient. It makes you powerful. You don't need a faster life. You need a deeper one. You need a calmer one. You need a more intentional one. And all of that begins the moment you choose to slow down. 8. Your inner stillness is the most powerful force you have. There comes a point in every person's life when they realize that the world outside will never stop moving. People will continue changing. Situations will continue shifting. Problems will rise, dissolve, and rise again in new forms. Life will keep testing you. The weather will keep changing. The future will continue being uncertain, and the past will continue being unchangeable. You have no control over the world around you, and the more you try to fight this truth, the more you suffer. But Buddhism teaches something profoundly liberating. You don't need the world to be still, you just need yourself to be still. Because when your inner world becomes calm, life outside loses the power to shake you. Inner stillness is not the absence of problems. It is the absence of unnecessary mental noise. It is the feeling of being grounded even when life feels chaotic. It is the ability to remain centered even when your emotions pull you in 100 directions. It is the quiet strength of a person who no longer reacts impulsively, no longer overthinks every situation, and no longer loses themselves in the storm. Inner stillness is not something you find by running away from the world. It is something you build by turning inward, again and again, until peace becomes your natural state. Most people live their lives in constant mental motion. Their thoughts run without rest, bouncing from memory to fear, from regret to imagination, from worry to self-doubt. They wake up with racing thoughts, move through the day with anxious thoughts, and sleep with restless thoughts. They think endlessly, but rarely deeply. They react quickly, but rarely consciously. Their mind is a spinning wheel that never stops, and because of this, they never taste real peace. They live as if they are being chased by their own mind. Inner stillness breaks this cycle. It teaches you that you don't need to respond to every thought your mind produces. Thoughts are like wind, they come and go. They arrive suddenly and leave quietly. They change direction without warning. But you are not the wind, you are the mountain beneath it. When you live without inner stillness, the wind controls you. Every worry, every fear, every doubt pushes you emotionally. But when you cultivate inner stillness, the wind can blow as hard as it wants. You remain unmoved, rooted, grounded, stable, steady. You begin to live from a deeper place inside yourself. The biggest misconception people have is that inner stillness means doing nothing or thinking nothing. That is not true. Inner stillness means you are no longer allowing your thoughts to pull you like a puppet. You still think, but your thoughts no longer overpower you. You still feel emotions, but you no longer drown in them. You still face challenges, but you no longer let fear decide your response. Inner stillness is not emptiness, it is clarity. It is strength. It is wisdom. There is a Buddhist teaching that says the mind is like water. When the water is shaken, it becomes cloudy, and you cannot see anything clearly. But when the water becomes still, it becomes clear, and everything underneath becomes visible. This is exactly how your mind works. When your mind is constantly shaken by fear, anger, stress, or anxiety, it becomes impossible to see situations as they truly are. You misinterpret words. You assume the worst. You create problems that don't exist. You panic before thinking. You worry before understanding. You suffer before anything actually happens. But when your mind becomes still, clarity rises like sunlight breaking through clouds. You start seeing the situation clearly. You understand what truly matters and what doesn't. You take wiser actions. You make better decisions. You speak carefully instead of emotionally. You become aligned with truth instead of fear. Inner stillness is your greatest weapon against overthinking. Overthinking grows in a mind that is constantly moving, but when you slow down internally, overthinking loses its fuel. You begin to realize that your thoughts are just visitors, some helpful, some unhelpful, some neutral, but none of them are you. They do not define you. They do not control you. They do not determine your future. They are just patterns created by habit, and habits can change. Inner stillness is not achieved in one day. It is built gradually through small, intentional acts. You create stillness every time you pause before reacting, every time you take a deep breath instead of panicking, every time you choose silence over arguing, every time you observe your emotions instead of becoming them, every time you slow your thoughts enough to ask yourself, is this real, or is this my fear speaking? These small acts are how stillness grows, not through force, but through awareness. One of the reasons people fear stillness is because silence reveals truth. When everything becomes quiet, you begin to hear your heart clearly. You begin to notice the pain you ignored, the desires you suppressed, the wounds you never healed, and the fears you never addressed. Stillness shows you what needs to be felt, what needs to be released, and what needs to be understood. This can be uncomfortable at first, but only what is faced can be released. Only what is acknowledged can be healed. Only what is understood can be transformed. Inner stillness is not running away. It is facing yourself with courage and compassion. Once you get comfortable with stillness, it becomes the safest place you know. It becomes your refuge during chaos. It becomes a soft, warm space inside you where no negativity can reach. You stop depending on other people for emotional stability. You stop needing external validation to feel worthy. You stop expecting the world to make you feel safe. You realize that the only true security in life is the stability you build within your own heart. Imagine facing stress not with panic, but with calm presence. Imagine moving through problems with a gentle mind instead of a chaotic one. Imagine dealing with conflict without losing yourself emotionally. Imagine being the type of person whose peace radiates so strongly that others feel calmer just by being around you. Inner stillness makes this possible. It is not a fantasy, it is a practice, a skill, a choice you make repeatedly until it becomes your natural way of being. Inner stillness also makes life feel richer. When the mind is calm, you begin to experience life more deeply. You notice beauty you never saw before. You appreciate small joys that once felt meaningless. You feel gratitude more naturally. You enjoy moments instead of rushing through them. You connect with people more genuinely. You listen fully, speak mindfully, and move intentionally. Your entire life becomes more alive. One of the greatest gifts of inner stillness is that it helps you hear your intuition clearly. Intuition is quiet, fear is loud, anxiety is loud, overthinking is loud. But intuition speaks in whispers, gentle impressions, subtle feelings, quiet knowing. When your mind is noisy, you cannot hear this inner voice. But when your mind becomes still, your intuition becomes clear like a bell. You begin to sense what decisions feel right. You feel guided, not confused. You feel directed, not lost. This is why stillness is the foundation of wisdom. Inner stillness does not mean life will stop challenging you. Life will continue being unpredictable, but your reactions to life will transform. Instead of exploding with anger, you respond with clarity. Instead of collapsing under stress, you breathe through it. Instead of drowning in emotional storms, you anchor yourself in your breath. Instead of letting fear make decisions, you allow your inner wisdom to guide you. Stillness gives you strength that force never can. People often look for peace in relationships, achievements, money, success, or external comfort. But the deepest peace does not come from things outside you. It comes from knowing that no matter what happens, you can return to your center. It comes from understanding that your mind does not have to control you. It comes from cultivating a quiet space inside yourself that remains untouched by noise, chaos, or fear. When you learn to live with inner stillness, you stop rushing, you stop forcing, you stop pleasing, you stop proving, you stop explaining yourself to people who don't listen, you start living deliberately, you start choosing wisely, you start protecting your energy with intention, you start moving through life with a soft but unshakable strength. Inner stillness is not an escape from life. It is the key to living it fully. And the most beautiful part, stillness is already inside you. It has always been inside you. It is the quiet, undisturbed part of your being that anxiety has covered but never destroyed. You don't need to create stillness. You only need to return to it. 9. Healing begins when you stop fighting your own mind. There is a silent battle happening inside every human being, a battle between the self you want to become and the thoughts that pull you backward, a battle between peace and fear, clarity and confusion, acceptance and resistance. Most of the suffering in your life does not come from the world outside. It comes from this inner conflict. The mind wants to analyze, argue, judge, predict, defend, regret, imagine, and assume. Meanwhile, your deeper self just wants to breathe, rest, understand, and be present. True healing begins the day you stop fighting your own mind and start understanding it. Your mind is not your enemy. It only becomes your enemy when you try to silence it by force. When you try to suppress your emotions, they grow louder. When you try to ignore your fears, they become bigger. When you try to escape your thoughts, they chase you. When you try to outrun your past, it follows you. Healing does not come from pushing things away. It comes from gently turning toward them without fear. It comes from learning to observe your mind without becoming trapped inside it. Buddhism teaches that the mind is like a wild animal, not bad, not evil, not broken, but untrained. If you fight it, it becomes more aggressive. If you run from it, it becomes more chaotic. But if you approach it with patience, compassion, and awareness, it becomes calm. The moment you stop wrestling with your mind is the moment you begin to understand that thoughts do not need to be suppressed. They need to be seen clearly. Overthinking happens when you treat every thought as if it is important, urgent, meaningful, or dangerous. But not every thought deserves your attention. Not every fear is a warning. Not every emotion requires a reaction. Not every worry needs a plan. When you fight thoughts, they become stronger. When you give them power, they grow. But when you simply watch them come and go without engaging, they lose their ability to control you. Healing begins when you stop believing every thought your mind creates. Your mind is a storyteller. It can create fear from nothing, doubt from silence, danger from imagination, and pain from memory. But you must remember that a story is only as powerful as the person who believes it. The moment you stop feeding the story, it starts dissolving. Think of your mind like a sky filled with clouds. Some clouds are dark, heavy, and stormy. Some are soft and peaceful. Some are fast. Some are slow. But none of them stay forever. Your thoughts are the clouds. You are the sky. The clouds do not define the sky. They only pass through it. The moment you identify as the cloud, you suffer. The moment you identify as the sky, you become free. The reason most people feel mentally overwhelmed is because they keep trying to control their thoughts instead of understanding them. Control creates tension. Understanding creates freedom. When you say, "I shouldn't feel this way," you strengthen the emotion. When you say, "I shouldn't think this," you strengthen the thought. But when you say, "I see this thought, I accept its presence, and I choose not to feed it," you weaken its power. Healing begins with acceptance. Acceptance does not mean surrendering to your fears. Acceptance means acknowledging what is happening inside you without judgment. It means saying, "Yes, this thought is here. Yes, this emotion is here. But I don't need to run from it, and I don't need to fight it." Acceptance creates space inside you, space for clarity, space for breath, space for peace. Most people treat their mind like an enemy they must defeat. But the truth is, the mind is simply scared. Your thoughts are not trying to hurt you, they are trying to protect you. Overthinking is the mind's attempt to keep you safe by predicting every possibility. Anxiety is the mind's attempt to anticipate danger. Fear is the mind's attempt to prevent pain. Even negative thoughts are misguided forms of self-protection. When you understand this, you stop fighting yourself. You stop treating your thoughts as monsters and start treating them as confused messengers. Healing begins when you treat your mind with compassion instead of aggression. Buddhism teaches that when you stop resisting your inner world, it softens naturally. Resistance tightens the mind. Acceptance relaxes it. When you resist fear, it grows. When you look at fear calmly, it loses its intensity. When you resist sadness, it becomes heavier. When you allow sadness to be felt without shame, it begins to move through you. Emotions are energy, they must move. When you block them, they accumulate inside you. When you welcome them, they transform. Your mind becomes peaceful not when you force silence, but when you create safety. When the mind feels safe, it stops shouting. When the heart feels safe, it stops breaking. When the soul feels safe, it stops hiding. Stillness is not forced discipline. It is the natural result of inner safety. Healing also begins when you stop identifying with the voice in your head. You have a mind, but you are not the mind. You have thoughts, but you are not your thoughts. You have emotions, but you are not your emotions. There is a deeper awareness inside you, the watcher, the observer, the silent presence that notices everything without being affected. When you learn to live from this deeper awareness, the mind no longer controls your life. It becomes a tool you use, not a prison you live inside. When you stop fighting your mind, you begin to understand the root of your thoughts. You see that your fears come from old wounds. You see that your insecurities come from past experiences. You see that your overthinking comes from unprocessed emotions. You see that your doubts come from a lack of self-trust. And instead of judging yourself, you begin healing yourself. You begin giving your inner self what it has always needed: compassion, attention, understanding, and patience. Healing is not loud. It does not come with fireworks. It does not happen in one moment. Healing is quiet, soft, subtle, and gradual. It begins with tiny shifts, choosing to breathe instead of panic, choosing to observe instead of react, choosing to accept instead of resist, choosing to comfort yourself instead of abandoning yourself. These small choices, repeated consistently, create inner transformation. Healing also requires slowing down enough to feel your emotions. Many people stay busy to avoid feeling. They distract themselves with noise, screens, goals, people, movement, or habits, because silence makes them face what they've been avoiding. But suppressed emotions do not disappear. They become overthinking, anxiety, restlessness, or numbness. When you slow down, emotions rise to the surface. This is not a sign of weakness, it is a sign of healing. What rises, releases. What is felt, heals. What is acknowledged, transforms. When you stop fighting your mind, you realize something incredibly important. Your thoughts are not threats, they are signals. They tell you where you are hurt. They tell you where you need healing. They tell you what you fear. They tell you what you need. They tell you what you have suppressed. Your thoughts are messengers, not enemies. Instead of fighting them, listen to them. Not to believe them, but to understand them. Healing also involves letting go of perfection. A peaceful mind does not mean a mind that never thinks negatively. A peaceful mind is one that does not panic when negative thoughts appear. It allows them to come and allows them to go. It does not cling to them. It does not fight them. It does not build stories around them. It simply lets them pass, like leaves floating down a river. The truth is, your mind will never be completely silent, but it can become calm. It can become spacious. It can become gentle. It can become peaceful. Healing does not remove thoughts. It removes attachment to thoughts. It removes fear around thoughts. It removes identification with thoughts. The thoughts continue to appear, but they lose their emotional weight. When you stop fighting your mind, you begin to live from a place of clarity and presence. You begin to enjoy moments again. You begin to feel comfortable inside your own body. You begin to trust yourself more. You begin to stop overreacting. You begin to stop assuming the worst. You begin to stop drowning in the future or the past. You begin to experience life directly instead of through the filter of fear. Healing begins when you stop fighting yourself. It begins when you make peace with your inner world. It begins when you say, "I am safe inside myself." And it becomes complete when you realize the truth. You were never broken, you were simply overwhelmed. The moment you stop fighting your mind is the moment your mind finally has the space to heal. 10. Freedom comes when you learn to detach from what hurts you. Every human being carries invisible attachments, expectations, memories, dreams, fears, relationships, identities, and imagined futures, and these attachments quietly shape your entire emotional life. Some attachments bring love and connection, but many bring suffering. You suffer not because life is cruel, but because the mind refuses to let go of what is already gone, refuses to accept what it cannot control, and refuses to release what is no longer healthy. True freedom begins the moment you understand this. You cannot be peaceful while gripping tightly to things that disturb your inner world. Detachment in Buddhism does not mean not caring. It does not mean becoming emotionless. It does not mean disconnecting from life. Detachment means something far deeper. You stop depending on external things for your inner peace. It means your happiness is not held hostage by circumstances, people, or outcomes. It means your emotional balance is not controlled by things outside your authority. It means you love deeply, but you don't cling desperately. You experience life fully, but you don't collapse when things change. Most people misunderstand detachment because they confuse it with coldness. But real detachment is warm, gentle, compassionate, and wise. It allows you to love without losing yourself. It allows you to help without draining yourself. It allows you to care without becoming controlled. It allows you to experience emotions without drowning in them. Detachment is not the end of feeling. It is the beginning of emotional freedom. Suffering grows when you cling to what is trying to leave. You hold on to relationships that have already ended in the heart. You replay memories that cannot be changed. You carry guilt that no longer belongs to you. You worry about outcomes you cannot control. You try to force life to look a certain way. You stay attached to old versions of yourself, old dreams, old expectations, old wounds, and old stories. The mind clings because it believes clinging is safety, but clinging is actually the source of your suffering. Like a tight fist, the more you hold on, the more tension you create. Healing begins the moment you choose to loosen your mental grip. Detachment begins with acknowledging a simple truth. Everything in life is temporary. People change, circumstances shift, relationships evolve, emotions rise and fade. Opportunities appear and disappear. Your body ages. Your mind transforms. Even the challenges you face today will someday be memories. Trying to freeze life in place is like trying to catch the wind with your hands. Impossible, exhausting, and painful. But when you stop chasing permanence and start flowing with change, peace naturally rises within you. The root of attachment is fear. You fear losing someone you love. You fear losing your identity. You fear the emptiness that comes after letting go. You fear uncertainty. You fear the unknown. But in trying to protect yourself from pain, you often create more pain. The person who fears abandonment becomes clingy. The person who fears rejection becomes self-sacrificing. The person who fears failure becomes paralyzed. The person who fears loneliness stays in unhealthy relationships. The person who fears uncertainty tries to control everything and ends up overwhelmed. Detachment dissolves these fears not by force, but by understanding that you are not dependent on anything outside yourself to feel whole. To detach does not mean you stop loving. It means you stop suffering through love. You stop tying your worth to someone else's behavior. You stop measuring your value by how others treat you. You stop giving people the power to disturb your peace. You stop expecting someone else to save you from your own emotions. You stop believing that happiness must come from outside. Detachment teaches you to love in a healthy way, with boundaries, with self-respect, with inner strength. A detached mind is not cold. It is clear. It sees reality without the fog of emotional desperation. It sees people as they are, not as you wish them to be. It sees situations with wisdom instead of fear. It accepts endings without collapsing. It welcomes beginnings without anxiety. It experiences emotions fully, but does not become imprisoned by them. Detachment is deeply connected to acceptance. You cannot detach from something you refuse to accept. Acceptance means you stop arguing with reality. You stop wishing things were different. You stop trying to rewrite the past in your mind. You stop expecting people to behave in ways that go against their nature. Acceptance does not mean liking everything that happens. It means acknowledging that resisting what already is only prolongs your suffering. Once acceptance enters, detachment becomes possible. When you stop fighting your life, you begin to flow with it. When you stop forcing outcomes, you make space for better ones. When you stop clinging to what is leaving, you make room for what is coming. When you stop trying to control people, you allow relationships to breathe. And when you stop believing your world will collapse without certain things, you discover your own inner strength. Detachment also means creating emotional space. It means you no longer react instantly to everything. You no longer explode when things trigger you. You no longer feel the need to respond to every opinion, every message, every conflict, every emotion. You begin to understand the power of stepping back. You begin to trust the wisdom of silence. You begin to see that not everything deserves your energy. Your peace becomes the filter through which you choose your responses. When you detach, people lose their ability to manipulate your emotions. Situations lose their ability to overwhelm you. Your past loses its ability to cage you. Your worries lose their ability to control you. You begin to build a life that feels grounded, steady, and internally secure. Many people think the world needs to become peaceful for them to feel peaceful. But the world will always be chaotic. The road will always be unpredictable. The people around you will always have their moods, flaws, fears, insecurities, and changes. Detachment frees you from depending on external calm. It gives you the unshakable ability to stay peaceful inside, even when everything outside is uncertain. The deepest form of detachment is realizing that you are not your thoughts. When you detach from your thoughts, you create inner spaciousness. You are no longer dragged by every fear that appears. You are no longer trapped in mental stories. You are no longer controlled by impulsive emotions. You become the observer watching thoughts rise and fall without grabbing them, without fighting them, without believing them. When this happens, you begin to experience true freedom, the freedom of not being enslaved by your own mind. Detachment also teaches you how to let go with grace. Letting go is not losing. Letting go is not failure. Letting go is allowing life to move, allowing yourself to grow, and allowing your heart to breathe. Holding on to what hurts is far more painful than releasing it. You cannot heal while gripping the knife that is hurting you. You cannot evolve while clinging to the version of yourself that is breaking. You cannot move forward while dragging chains behind you. Letting go becomes easier when you understand that life never removes something without preparing to replace it with something wiser, kinder, or more aligned with your growth. Detachment makes room for better things to enter your life. It clears emotional space. It rebuilds inner strength. It restores clarity. Detachment is the bridge between suffering and peace. It is the shift from control to trust, from fear to wisdom, from clinging to flowing. When you detach from what hurts you, your mind becomes lighter, your heart becomes softer, and your life becomes more spacious. You begin to breathe again, you begin to feel again, you begin to live again. And slowly, gently, powerfully, you discover the truth. Freedom does not come from holding on. Freedom comes from letting go. 11. Your mind heals when you learn to sit with yourself without fear. One of the greatest spiritual awakenings in life happens when a person finally learns how to sit with themselves without fear, distraction, or escape. Most people spend their entire lives running not physically, but mentally and emotionally. They run away from silence, run away from stillness, run away from their thoughts, run away from their memories, and run away from the parts of themselves they don't want to face. When the mind is uncomfortable with itself, it becomes restless. It overthinks, panics, imagines, reacts, and escapes. But Buddhism teaches a profound truth. True peace begins the moment you stop running and finally sit with yourself as you are. This lesson is not about meditation as a technique, but about the deeper understanding that healing happens when you are willing to face your inner world with honesty. You cannot heal a wound you avoid looking at. You cannot calm a mind you constantly distract. You cannot understand yourself when you drown your own awareness in noise. Sitting with yourself means meeting the real you, not the version you show the world, not the version your fears created, but the version beneath all the layers. Most people only know themselves on a surface level. They know their habits, their reactions, their behaviors, and their patterns. But they rarely ask, why do I behave this way? Why do I feel anxious when I'm alone? Why do I need constant distractions? Why does silence feel uncomfortable? Why does my mind become loud the moment life becomes quiet? These questions scare the ego, and that is why the ego forces you to stay busy, stay distracted, stay loud, and stay away from yourself. Sitting with yourself is an act of courage. It is the moment when you allow the truth to rise, when you allow emotions to surface, when you allow your own presence to become enough. This is where true healing begins, in the ability to be alone with your inner world without feeling the need to escape it. The mind becomes restless because it has been taught that silence is dangerous. For years, your mind associated stillness with pain. If you sit quietly, you might feel your sadness. If you stop scrolling your phone, you might face your loneliness. If you stop distracting yourself with conversations, noise, or entertainment, you might confront your fears. This is why people feel uncomfortable when they are alone, not because something is wrong with them, but because they never learned how to be present with their own existence. Buddhism says that when a person cannot sit with themselves, they become a prisoner to their own mind. But when a person becomes comfortable with their inner world, they become free from everything outside it. The world cannot disturb someone who has learned to be at peace with their own thoughts. Silence cannot hurt someone who has learned to welcome it. Loneliness cannot break someone who has learned to enjoy their own company. When you master the art of sitting with yourself, you become emotionally independent, not cold, but strong, not distant, but centered, not isolated, but deeply connected to yourself. There is a beautiful transformation that happens when you stop running. At first, your thoughts come rushing in because they have been waiting for your attention. You might feel uncomfortable because emotions you suppressed begin to rise. You might feel restless because your mind has been trained to stay busy. But with patience, something shifts. The storm slowly quiets. The noise begins to fade. Your breath begins to deepen. Your awareness becomes clearer. And beneath all the noise, you begin to hear your own truth. A truth that was always there, but was hidden under layers of fear, distraction, and avoidance. This truth is simple. You are stronger than your mind has ever allowed you to believe. You are wiser than your fears. You are deeper than your thoughts. You are more peaceful than your past. And you are capable of healing in ways you have not yet imagined. Sitting with yourself is not about forcing calmness. It is about creating space. Space for emotions to move. Space for thoughts to settle. Space for your inner wisdom to speak. Space for your wounds to breathe. Space for your mind to finally rest after years of chaos. When you sit with yourself long enough, you begin to understand your triggers. You realize that your anxiety does not come from the present moment. It comes from past wounds. You see that your overthinking does not come from real danger. It comes from imagined fear. You discover that your emotional pain does not come from reality. It comes from resisting reality. These insights cannot be forced. They emerge naturally when the mind becomes quiet enough to see clearly. This is why Buddhist monks spend years practicing sitting meditation, not because sitting is special, but because silence reveals truth, and truth heals, awareness heals, presence heals. Nothing heals a person more deeply than understanding themselves fully and compassionately. When you learn to sit with yourself, you stop fearing your emotions. You begin to understand that emotions are not permanent, they rise, peak, and fade like waves. You stop fearing your thoughts because you realize they are not instructions, they are just mental activity. You stop fearing your loneliness because you learn that being alone is not the same as being empty. It is a chance to recharge, reconnect, and realign. You stop fearing silence because silence becomes your sanctuary instead of your discomfort. The reason your mind becomes heavy is because you carry too much inside you. Memories you haven't processed, fears you haven't faced, emotions you haven't released, a past you haven't forgiven, expectations you haven't let go of, desires that conflict with your reality. When you finally sit with yourself, all of these unprocessed pieces slowly rise into awareness, not to overwhelm you, but to be healed, acknowledged, and released. Healing happens in layers. At first, the surface-level thoughts appear: what you need to do, what you forgot, what went wrong, what you fear might happen. But as you sit longer and deeper, the surface thoughts settle, and deeper emotions rise: sadness you buried, disappointment you never expressed, hurt you never healed, fear you never acknowledged. Sitting with yourself allows these emotions to come up gently rather than bursting out through anxiety, anger, or emotional breakdowns. Inner peace does not come from running away from pain. It comes from finally turning toward it with compassion. When you sit with your sadness, you realize it is not as big as you feared. When you sit with your fear, you realize it does not define you. When you sit with your loneliness, you begin to see it is not emptiness. It is a message asking you to reconnect with yourself. When you sit with your mind, the mind stops being your enemy and becomes your companion. Most people look for healing in the wrong places: in relationships, achievements, money, changes, escapes, distractions, or external comfort. But healing is an inner journey. You cannot change your inner world by rearranging your outer world. You must enter the world inside yourself with courage. Imagine building a home where you feel safe, a home inside your mind, a home where your thoughts are gentle, a home where your emotions are allowed, a home where your memories no longer hurt you, a home where your inner voice speaks with kindness instead of judgment, a home where you can rest from the chaos of life. This is what happens when you learn to sit with yourself without fear. You build an inner home so peaceful that nothing outside can destroy it. Sitting with yourself also teaches you the power of neutrality. Not everything needs to be labeled as good or bad. Not every thought needs interpretation. Not every emotion needs a story. Not every situation needs a reaction. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is simply observe without judgment. This neutrality frees your mind from mental drama. It stops the cycle of overthinking before it even begins. It returns your mind to clarity. As you continue practicing sitting with yourself, you develop self-trust. You begin to trust your ability to handle emotions. You trust your ability to survive discomfort. You trust your ability to stay grounded. You trust your ability to navigate life without losing yourself. This self-trust becomes the foundation of mental peace. When you no longer fear your thoughts lose power. When you no longer fear your emotions flow naturally. When you no longer fear silence becomes healing. When you no longer fear being alone, you stop depending on others to fill your inner emptiness. This is freedom. This is peace. This is healing. Sitting with yourself is the doorway to spiritual maturity. It teaches you how to be your own safe place. It teaches you that your mind is not a battlefield. It is a garden that needs attention, patience, and care. When you stop fighting your inner world and begin tending to it, the weeds of fear start dying, the flowers of wisdom begin growing, and the soil of your soul becomes fertile again. This lesson is not about perfection. It is about commitment. The commitment to return to yourself again and again, even when it feels uncomfortable, even when the mind becomes loud, even when emotions rise unexpectedly. Every moment you spend with yourself is a moment you spend healing. There is a quiet strength in people who know how to sit with themselves. They are unshakable. They are grounded. They are calm. They do not panic easily. They do not collapse under uncertainty. They do not lose themselves when life becomes chaotic. They have built a sanctuary inside themselves, and that sanctuary protects them through every storm. And slowly, gently, beautifully, you begin to see the truth. You are not afraid of your mind. You are afraid of facing your own depth. But your depth is where your healing lives. When you learn to sit with yourself, you become whole again. 12. You become truly free the moment you stop taking your thoughts personally. There is a moment in every person's spiritual journey when they realize something life-changing. Most of the suffering they feel is not caused by life itself, but by how personally they take their thoughts. A thought appears in your mind, a fear, a doubt, a memory, a criticism, and instantly you treat it as if it came from some unquestionable authority. You believe it, you obey it, you react to it, you allow it to shape your mood, your decisions, your identity, your entire day. But Buddhism teaches a liberating truth. Your thoughts are not you, and they are not personal. They are simply passing mental events. The moment you stop taking them personally, your mind becomes lighter, your emotions soften, and your peace grows instantly. Most people live inside their thoughts, as if the thoughts were the reality itself. If the mind says, "You're not good enough," they feel defeated. If the mind says, "Something bad will happen," they feel anxious. If the mind says, "People don't like you," they feel insecure. The mind whispers, and the heart feels pain. The mind imagines, and the body reacts. The mind remembers old wounds, and the soul bleeds again. But none of this is necessary. It is simply the result of believing that everything the mind says is true and personal. You were not born with this habit. You learned it. As a child, when a thought appeared, you experienced it without judgment, and it passed quickly. Children don't cling to thoughts or build identities around them. But as you grew older, you were taught to identify with your thoughts. You were taught that "I think, therefore I am." You were taught that your thoughts define you. You were taught that your mind knows your truth. And slowly, without noticing, you became trapped inside your own thinking. But here is the truth Buddhism reveals. Your mind is a narrator, a storyteller, a commentator, not an authority. Thoughts arise because of memory, habit, conditioning, trauma, environment, mood, and even random neural firing. They come from many places, but they do not come from your deepest self. They come from the surface level of your mind, not from the depths of your consciousness. When you take them personally, you suffer. When you see them for what they are, fleeting patterns, you become free. Imagine sitting on the side of a road watching cars pass. Some cars are loud, some are slow. Some are fast, some are beautiful. Some are old and broken. But no matter how close they pass, you don't jump into every car. You just watch them. This is how you must treat your thoughts. They are passing vehicles, not your identity, not your truth, not your responsibility. When you start observing thoughts, instead of climbing inside them, your entire life changes. Most people suffer because they think their thoughts are instructions. A fear appears and they say, "I must react." A doubt appears and they say, "This must mean something." A painful memory appears and they say, "Why am I like this?" But thoughts do not require obedience. They require awareness. Awareness breaks the emotional attachment. Awareness dissolves the belief that the thought is my thought. Awareness creates space between you and the content of your mind. And in that space, peace begins. When you take your thoughts personally, every negative thought becomes a wound. When you detach from your thoughts, Even the negative ones lose their sharpness. They become like echoes heard, but not harmful. They become like passing clouds seen, but not clung to. They become like shadows present, but powerless. The mind produces thousands of thoughts every single day. If even 10% of them are negative, that means hundreds of thoughts might cause you suffering if you take them seriously. That is why people wake up tired, move through the day anxious, and go to sleep overwhelmed, because they are taking a natural mental process and turning it into an emotional war inside themselves. When you stop taking thoughts personally, you begin to see that thoughts are simply mental weather. Sometimes the weather is clear and bright. Sometimes it is cloudy. Sometimes it storms. But no matter what the weather looks like, the sky, the true you, remains untouched. Storm thoughts do not damage the sky. Fear thoughts do not stain the sky. Doubt thoughts do not break the sky. The sky remains open, unchanged, vast and free, just like your awareness. There is a deep strength that comes from realizing, this thought is here, but it does not belong to me. It may be a fear, but it is not your fear. It may be a memory, but it is not your identity. It may be a doubt, but it is not your truth. It may be a judgment, but it is not your voice. Thoughts appear because the mind has habits, and habits can be retrained. Healing begins the moment you place a small amount of space between you and your thought. The thought says, you can't do this. But instead of believing it, you say, there is that old fear voice again. The thought says, everyone is judging you. But you say, there is the insecurity arising. The thought says, something bad will happen. But you say, this is just my anxiety pattern. And instantly, the thought loses its emotional grip. Buddhism teaches a practice called non-identification. It means you observe thoughts without attaching I, me, or mine to them. Instead of saying, I am scared, you say, fear is present. Instead of saying, I am angry, you say, anger is moving through me. Instead of saying, I am broken, you say, pain is arising. Language matters. The way you speak to yourself determines the way you experience yourself. When you remove the identity from the emotion becomes lighter. You do not drown in thoughts. You drown in the belief that the thoughts define you. When you stop taking them personally, even strong emotions become manageable. Anxiety becomes a wave instead of a threat. Sadness becomes a passing rain instead of a storm. Anger becomes a spark instead of an explosion. Doubt becomes a thought instead of a truth. The moment you detach, you give yourself emotional breathing room. Taking thoughts personally also damages relationships. You misinterpret people's words because your mind fills the gaps with fear. You assume the worst because your mind projects insecurity. You replay conversations because your mind wants to fix imagined mistakes. But when you step back from your thoughts, you communicate more clearly, listen more openly, and respond more calmly. You stop projecting your inner wounds onto the outer world. When you stop taking thoughts personally, you finally see the world as it is, not as your fear paints it, not as your insecurity shapes it, not as your trauma distorts it. You begin experiencing life through clarity instead of through mental stories. This lesson also teaches the most powerful emotional skill: not reacting to every thought. Just because the mind speaks does not mean you must respond. Just because the mind predicts does not mean you must prepare for disaster. Just because the mind worries does not mean something is wrong. Just because the mind imagines does not mean you must suffer. The mind speaks because that is what minds do. Your freedom comes from not obeying its every word. When you stop taking thoughts personally, you stop spiraling. You stop panicking. You stop replaying. You stop assuming. You stop suffering unnecessarily. Most importantly, you stop living in your head and start living in your life. A calm mind is not one that has no thoughts. A calm mind is one that does not take its thoughts so seriously. Thoughts may come, thoughts may go, but you remain. Your awareness remains. Your presence remains. Your peace remains. And when you reach this stage, when thoughts are nothing more than background noise, and you are the silent watcher you experience, a freedom deeper than anything the world can give you. The freedom of not believing everything your mind says. The freedom of not carrying every thought as a burden. The freedom of not letting thoughts shape your worth. The freedom of not letting the mind control your day. This is the beginning of a new life. A life where thoughts appear like passing birds, where emotions flow like water, where the mind becomes a tool instead of a prison, and where you finally feel at home inside yourself. This is real freedom. This is peace. This is awakening. 13. Peace enters your life the moment you stop resisting what already is. There is a quiet truth that sits at the heart of all human suffering, not the suffering caused by life itself, but the suffering created by your own mind. You suffer the most, not because of what happens to you, but because of your resistance to what happens. You resist endings, you resist change, you resist uncertainty, you resist emotions, you resist the flow of life, you resist the present moment whenever it doesn't match the picture your mind had in mind. This resistance creates an invisible war inside you, a war between reality and expectations, between truth and illusion. Buddhism teaches that the moment you stop fighting what already is, peace enters your life like warm light breaking through a long storm. Most people don't realize they are resisting life because the resistance feels normal. When something doesn't go as planned, the mind instantly creates tension. This shouldn't be happening. Why is this happening to me? It wasn't supposed to be this way. I don't want this. I didn't prepare for this. And in those thoughts, the mind begins to fight reality, a fight that can never be won. Reality does not change because you argue with it. Reality does not soften because you dislike it. Reality does not adjust itself because you resist it. Reality simply is. And peace comes only when you align with it instead of arguing against it. Acceptance, in Buddhism, does not mean agreement. It does not mean liking or approving of everything that happens. Acceptance simply means acknowledging that resisting the present moment does not change it, it only makes you suffer. Acceptance removes the layer of emotional friction that makes life harder than it needs to be. When you stop saying this shouldn't be happening, you create emotional space for clarity. When you stop trying to fight every moment, you become open enough to understand it. Resistance is like tightening every muscle in your body to stop a wave from reaching the shore. No matter how strong you are, no matter how determined you are, the wave will reach the shore. Resistance exhausts you. Acceptance allows the wave to pass without drowning you. Every painful emotion you experience becomes heavier when you resist it. Sadness itself does not break you. Resisting sadness does. Fear itself does not overwhelm you. Resisting fear does. Loneliness itself does not destroy you. Resisting loneliness does. Emotions are natural visitors. They arise, move through you, and leave. But when you fight them, they stay. They become stuck inside you. They transform into anxiety, numbness, overthinking, and emotional heaviness. The mind thinks resistance will protect you, but it actually prevents healing. When you stop resisting your emotions, you start feeling them, and when you feel them without judgment, they begin to dissolve. Tears you resisted for years fall easily. Pain you pushed down begins to loosen. Memories you avoided lose their power. Fear that once controlled you becomes manageable. Acceptance is not surrender, it is release. It is relief. It is the softening of an inner knot you've carried for too long. People also resist change. Change is the nature of life. Nothing stays the same. Every relationship evolves. Every season passes. Every person grows. Every situation transforms. But the mind wants stability, predictability, and guarantees. So, when life begins to change, the mind panics. Why is this happening now? I wasn't ready. I want things to go back to how they were. But clinging to the past is like holding on to a riverbank while the river continues to flow. Eventually, you tire, and the river pulls you in anyway. Acceptance teaches you how to float instead of exhaust yourself fighting the current. Some people resist letting go, even when letting go is the only way forward. They hold on to relationships that have already ended emotionally. They hold on to dreams that no longer fit who they are becoming. They hold on to identities that were built on old versions of themselves. They hold on to pain because they fear the emptiness that comes after release. But acceptance shows you that the space created by letting go is not emptiness. It is possibility. It is rebirth. It is growth. It is new beginnings quietly waiting for your hands to open. Resistance also makes small problems feel enormous. The mind takes a simple challenge and adds layers of stories, fears, assumptions, and emotional reactions. But when you accept something as it is, you remove all those extra layers. You see the situation clearly. You face it calmly. You respond to it wisely. Acceptance is not passive. It is the foundation of intelligent action. Only when you stop resisting reality can you change what is changeable and endure what is not. Imagine holding a rope tightly while someone else pulls the other end. The harder you resist, the more the rope burns your hands. But when you let go, the pain stops instantly. This is exactly how resisting life feels. The rope is not the problem, your grip is. Life is not the pain, your resistance to it is. Acceptance also heals relationships. When you stop expecting people to behave exactly how you want them to, you let them be who they are. You stop creating unnecessary disappointment. You stop trying to control their emotions, choices, or intentions. You stop reacting to every small thing. You begin to understand that everyone acts from their own experiences, wounds, fears, and perspectives. Acceptance makes you compassionate. It softens you. It opens your heart. But the deepest acceptance is self-acceptance. Many people resist themselves. They resist their past. They resist their flaws. They resist their emotions. They resist their mistakes. They resist their desires. They resist their own truth. This inner conflict creates a lifetime of suffering. You cannot heal when you are at war with yourself. You cannot grow when you reject parts of yourself. You cannot find peace while fighting your own mind. Self-acceptance does not mean you stop improving. It means you stop hating yourself for being human. You stop attacking yourself for feeling emotions. You stop judging yourself for having fears. You stop expecting yourself to be perfect. You start treating yourself with compassion instead of criticism. When you accept yourself, you begin to expand. You begin to breathe. You begin to soften. You begin to grow from love instead of fear. Acceptance is the bridge between suffering and peace. It is the quiet doorway into clarity. When you accept the moment, you stop drowning in thoughts about how it should be. You stop creating mental storms. You stop exhausting yourself with resistance. Acceptance is not weakness, it is wisdom. It is understanding that peace comes not from controlling life, but from flowing with it. When you accept what cannot be changed, life becomes lighter. When you accept your emotions, you heal faster. When you accept your past, you reclaim your power. When you accept truth, you stop suffering from illusion. When you accept yourself, you become whole. Acceptance is the foundation of inner peace. The moment you stop resisting life is the moment life stops resisting you. And this is when a beautiful transformation begins, when you start living, not from fear, not from control, not from resistance, but from a quiet, deep, effortless peace inside you. This peace is yours the moment you choose it. 14. Your life transforms when you learn to respond, not react. There is a subtle but life-changing difference between reacting and responding. Most people live their entire lives reacting instantly, emotionally, impulsively, unconsciously to situations, people, thoughts, fears, conversations, and challenges. Their emotions control their decisions. Their impulses determine their actions. Their past wounds shape their present behavior. And because they react quickly, they often regret slowly. But Buddhism teaches that true peace, true clarity, and true maturity begin the moment you learn how to respond instead of react. A reaction is fast, automatic, and emotional. A response is slow, conscious, and wise. A reaction happens when your mind is chaotic. A response happens when your mind is calm. Reactions are driven by fear, ego, insecurity, or habit. Responses are guided by awareness, patience, and understanding. When you react, your emotions take over. When you respond, your awareness takes the lead. This shift from reaction to response is one of the deepest spiritual transformations you can experience. Most emotional suffering comes from reactions. You react to someone's words without understanding their intention. You react to a misunderstanding before asking for clarity. You react to a fear before checking if it's real. You react to a thought before realizing it's just a thought. You react to a situation before pausing to see the full picture. And in that reaction, anger rises, stress increases, anxiety deepens, and mistakes happen. The mind loves reacting because reacting requires no awareness. Awareness requires effort. Reaction requires none. The ego loves reacting because reacting makes it feel in control, even when it's destroying peace. Trauma loves reacting because reacting repeats old patterns, even when those patterns are painful. But awareness slows the mind. Awareness creates space between the trigger and your behavior. Awareness gives you time to breathe. Awareness allows wisdom to enter. This space, this pause, is where your true power lives. Imagine a match being struck. If you blow on it instantly, the fire expands. But if you wait a moment, the flame weakens. Similarly, when something triggers you emotionally, reacting instantly is like blowing on the flame. It grows larger. But when you pause, breathe, and observe, the emotional fire begins to weaken naturally. This pause is your power. This pause is your peace. This pause is your protection. This pause is your transformation. When you react from anger, you say things you don't mean. When you react from fear, you make decisions that limit your life. When you react from insecurity, you damage healthy relationships. When you react from trauma, you repeat old patterns that hurt you. But when you respond with awareness, your actions come from clarity instead of chaos. Responding does not mean staying silent or suppressing your emotions. Responding means giving yourself enough space to understand your emotions before expressing them. It means understanding what you feel and why you feel it. It means choosing your words, actions, and energy consciously instead of allowing your emotional impulse to choose for you. This is why reacting feels fast but leads to long-term pain, while responding feels slow but leads to long-term peace. Most reactions come from the past. When something triggers you now, it often awakens an old wound, a memory of rejection, a hurt from childhood, a fear learned long ago. Without awareness, the mind blends past and present together. You react to the new situation as if it is the old one. This is how people get stuck in emotional loops. Same reactions, same outcomes, same regrets, same suffering. But responding breaks the cycle. Responding says, I feel something rising in me. Let me breathe. I feel old pain awakening. Let me understand it. I feel triggered. Let me pause before acting. I feel emotional. Let me choose wisely. This inner dialogue is how emotional intelligence is born. The pause between trigger and action is where your entire life changes. Buddhism teaches that reaction is the mind's habit. but response is the mind's evolution. Reaction is instinct, response is consciousness. Reaction is the old self, response is the awakened self. Reaction is bondage, response is liberation. A person who reacts is controlled by life. A person who responds controls their inner life. When you learn to respond, the world no longer controls your emotions. Situations lose the ability to disturb you easily. People's words lose their power to shake you. Negative thoughts lose their ability to drag you into suffering. Life becomes smoother, calmer, softer. You begin living intentionally instead of impulsively. Emotional triggers become teachers instead of threats. Moments of stress become opportunities to ground yourself. Conflicts become opportunities to practice patience and wisdom. Setbacks become invitations to grow instead of reasons to panic. Responding also improves your relationships. When you react emotionally, communication becomes chaotic. You assume the worst. You misinterpret simple things. You speak without understanding. You hurt people unintentionally. But when you respond from awareness, you listen deeply. You speak gently. You understand more clearly. You act more compassionately. Your relationships become softer, healthier, more peaceful, and more respectful. Responding strengthens your character. You stop being someone who is easily provoked. You stop being predictable. You stop being emotionally controlled by others. You become someone who is calm when everyone else is stressed, grounded when others are overwhelmed, steady when others are reactive. People trust you more. They feel safe around your energy. Responding also helps you achieve your goals. When you react to difficulties, you give up easily. When you respond, you stay patient. When you react to fear, you avoid challenges. When you respond, you move forward with courage. When you react to setbacks, you take them personally. When you respond, you treat them as part of the journey. Your entire path in life changes when you become someone who responds instead of reacts. One of the greatest spiritual strengths you can develop is the ability to remain unmoved in the face of emotional triggers. Not numb, not cold, not detached, but deeply conscious. To feel everything fully, but choose your behavior wisely. To be internally calm, even when the situation is chaotic. To breathe instead of explode. To understand instead of assume. To pause instead of panic. This is mastery. This is freedom. Responding is not something you do once. It is a lifelong practice, a daily choice, a mental discipline, a spiritual muscle that grows stronger over time. And the more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. At first, the pause feels forced. But slowly, it becomes effortless. You begin automatically creating space between your emotions and your behavior. You begin automatically breathing when something triggers you. You begin naturally watching your thoughts instead of reacting to them. Eventually, you become someone whose peace cannot be taken easily. Someone whose mind is not easily shaken. Someone who carries stillness within, no matter what life brings. This is what Buddhism means when it teaches that peace comes from within, not from controlling the world, but from mastering your own reactions. And when you reach this stage, you will feel something extraordinary. A quiet strength, a deep calmness, a sense of inner power that does not depend on anything outside you. A confidence that comes from self-control, not ego. A freedom that comes from inner stability, not external success. You become the person you always wanted to be, not because life got easier, but because your inner world became stronger. A reaction is momentary satisfaction. A response is long-lasting peace. A reaction is an emotional reflex. A response is a conscious choice. A reaction is survival. A response is evolution. Your life transforms the moment you choose evolution over impulse. This is the path of the awakened mind. This is the path of peace. This is the path of inner mastery. 15. The moment you stop trying to control everything, your life finally starts to flow. There comes a point in every person's life when exhaustion becomes louder than fear. Exhaustion from worrying, from overthinking, from planning every step, from trying to control every outcome, from holding on to what is slipping away, from forcing life to move according to your timeline. In that moment of exhaustion, you begin to realize something profound. Life was never meant to be controlled, it was meant to be flowed with. And the moment you stop trying to control everything, your life finally starts aligning, opening, softening, unfolding in ways you never imagined. Control is an illusion the mind creates to feel safe. It tells you that if you plan perfectly, worry enough, expect the worst, anticipate every problem, and predict every possibility, then somehow life will obey you. But life does not follow your instructions. Life follows its own rhythm, and when your rhythm fights against it, suffering appears. The people you want to stay may leave, the opportunities you cling to may dissolve, the things you fear may never happen, the things you force may fall apart. Control does not protect you, it suffocates you. It traps you inside a rigid version of reality, leaving no room for growth, change, or divine timing. When you try to control everything, you live in constant tension. Your body stays tight. Your breath becomes shallow. Your mind becomes hyperactive. Your heart becomes guarded. You stop trusting the process and start fearing every step. But Buddhism teaches a gentle and liberating truth. Peace comes not from perfect control, but from deep surrender. Surrender does not mean giving up. It does not mean becoming passive. It does not mean allowing life to walk over you. Surrender means releasing the illusion that you can force life to be something other than what it is. It means trusting that what is meant for you will not pass you. It means understanding that the path unfolds at its own divine timing. It means responding to life with wisdom instead of reacting with fear. Life is like a river. When you try to control the river, you drown. When you move with the river, you flow. When you trust the river, you arrive. Control is like grabbing the river with your hands. Surrender is learning how to float. Most stress comes from trying to control things that were never yours to control. You cannot control other people's feelings. You cannot control their choices. You cannot control the passage of time. You cannot control the outcome of every situation. You cannot control the past. You cannot control the future. The only thing you ever truly control is how you show up in each moment, your thoughts, your breath, your actions, your mindset, your energy. The mind tries to control because it fears uncertainty. It wants absolute reassurance, guarantees, and clarity. But the more you try to control uncertainty, the more uncertain and unstable you feel. This is the paradox. The harder you grasp, the more life slips through your fingers. The more you try to force timing, the more delays you experience. The more you try to manipulate outcomes, the more resistance you meet. Life becomes easier the moment you stop trying to force it. Letting go of control brings a different kind of intelligence, a deeper, intuitive knowing that everything has its place, its purpose, its timing, its meaning. You begin to see that some things fall apart, so better things can rise. Some people walk away so your path can open. Some opportunities don't work out because something more aligned is coming. Some delays happen because you are being protected or redirected. When you stop trying to control life, you begin to see its wisdom. Surrender does not mean you stop putting effort. It means you stop mixing effort with fear. You stop mixing goals with desperation. You stop mixing desire with panic. You stop attaching your self-worth to outcomes. You work with calm intention, not terrified pressure. This is the highest form of strength, not forcing, but allowing. You learn to trust the process. You learn to trust yourself. You learn to trust timing. You learn to trust the unfolding of your life. And trust is the opposite of control. When you stop trying to control people, relationships become healthier. Instead of trying to change someone, you allow them to be who they are. Instead of demanding certainty, you allow love to grow naturally. Instead of clinging to someone, you give them the freedom to stay because they want to, not because you fear losing them. Control suffocates relationships. Trust strengthens them. When you stop trying to control the future, your anxiety begins to loosen. The mind stops racing into imagined disasters. The heart stops worrying about things that haven't happened. The body stops bracing for danger that does not exist. Instead of chasing certainty, you begin embracing presence. Instead of living in your head, you start living in your life. When you stop trying to control your emotions, they stop controlling you. Emotions are not meant to be controlled, they are meant to be felt. When you suppress them, they grow louder. When you avoid them, they grow heavier. But when you allow them to rise and fall like waves, they move through you freely and gently. The mind becomes calmer because it no longer fights against itself. When you stop trying to control outcomes, the universe finally has space to work. Control blocks blessings because blessings need openness, not tension. Control closes doors because doors open only when your hands are open too. Control chokes the flow of life. Surrender restores it. Letting go of control brings a level of ease that feels like breathing after holding your breath for years. The body softens, the mind relaxes, the heart opens. Life feels less like a battle and more like a dance. You begin to see opportunities you once overlooked. You begin to feel gratitude you once rushed past. You begin to experience joy in simple moments because your mind is no longer trapped in fear of the future. Surrender gives you back your strength. Control steals it. Surrender gives you back your clarity. Control clouds it. Surrender gives you back your freedom. Control caches you. Surrender gives you back your peace. Control destroys it. Letting go of control also reveals a deeper truth. Life is unfolding with or without your worry. The seeds you plant will grow in their own season. The doors meant for you will open when your energy aligns. The right people will show up when you are ready. What is truly yours cannot be forced or rushed. And what is not yours cannot be held onto no matter how tight your grip. There is a softness that enters your life when you stop forcing everything. Your mornings feel lighter. Your nights feel calmer. Your decisions feel clearer. Your relationships feel more natural. Your mind feels less exhausted. Your heart feels less burdened. You start trusting that things will fall into place not because you controlled them, but because you aligned with them. The deepest form of strength is knowing when to act and when to release, when to push and when to pause, when to speak and when to stay silent, when to pursue and when to let go, when to trust yourself and when to trust the universe. Letting go of control does not make you weak, it makes you wise. It makes you adaptable. It makes you open. It makes you peaceful. It makes you powerful in a quiet, grounded way. The world becomes gentler when you stop fighting it. Life becomes simpler when you stop complicating it. Your heart becomes lighter when you stop carrying unnecessary burdens. Your mind becomes peaceful when you stop forcing it to hold everything together. Your life begins to flow the moment you stop trying to control its currents. This is the beginning of true peace. This is the beginning of true freedom. This is the beginning of your new life. As you reach the end of this journey, you may notice something shifting inside you, not a dramatic explosion, not a sudden enlightenment, but a subtle softening, a quiet understanding, a gentle awakening, the kind of realization that feels like a deep exhale after years of holding your breath. Throughout these lessons, you have walked through the landscapes of your mind: fear, overthinking, control, attachment, resistance, self-judgment, emotional storms, inner stillness, and quiet truth. And now, standing at the end, you can finally see what Buddhism has been guiding you toward from the beginning. The peace you've spent your whole life searching for was never outside you, It has always been inside. It was simply buried under layers of noise, fear, stories, and assumptions. Your mind, for years, has been like a room filled with clutter-old memories, imagined fears, unresolved emotions, expectations, disappointments, unanswered questions, and unhealed wounds. You tried to organize the room by rearranging the objects on the outside, changing your environment, changing people, changing relationships, changing circumstances, hoping that when the outer world became peaceful, the inner world would follow. But true peace never came, because the clutter was not in the world, it was in your mind. The lessons you've read were not instructions to escape life, but invitations to clean that inner room slowly, gently, intentionally, until the natural peace underneath could finally breathe again. Each lesson was a step toward this clarity. You learned that thoughts are not commands but passing clouds. You learned that emotions are not enemies but temporary visitors. You learned that reacting pulls you into chaos, while responding roots you in wisdom. You learned that attachment is the cause of emotional pain, and that letting go is the path to freedom. You learned that awareness is your strength, not overthinking. You learned that acceptance brings peace, while resistance creates suffering. You learned that silence is not emptiness but healing. You learned that the mind is not a dictator, it is a tool that can be trained. All these lessons were not random ideas, they were the parts of a single truth. You have the power to shape your experience of life, the moment you master your inner world. And now, you stand at a crossroad, holding a new kind of strength, not loud, not aggressive, not forceful, but gentle, steady, grounded, and unshakable. The strength of someone who finally understands that every moment is shaped not by what happens, but by how they meet it. You begin to realize that peace is not something you find, it is something you create. And you create it through awareness, presence, compassion, and surrender. This journey has shown you that the mind is not the enemy, even though it often feels like it. The mind is just an overprotective servant trying to keep you safe in the only ways it knows, by worrying, imagining danger, predicting failure, replaying old wounds, and controlling everything. But now you see clearly that safety does not come from fear. It comes from understanding. Peace does not come from controlling life. It comes from trusting it. Happiness does not come from perfect circumstances. It comes from the inner stillness you carry into those circumstances. As you reflect on each lesson, you begin to see how deeply connected they are. When you stop taking thoughts personally, your reactions soften. When your reactions soften, your relationships become gentler. When your relationships become gentler, your emotional world becomes stable. When your emotional world becomes stable, your mind becomes quieter. When your mind becomes quieter, you begin living instead of thinking. When you start living instead of thinking, you experience life as it truly is, not as your fears paint it, not as your expectations distort it, but as it unfolds in the present moment. And the present moment is always kinder than your thoughts about it. There is a beauty that emerges when the mind becomes clear, a beauty that was always there, but hidden beneath layers of fear and noise. You begin noticing small joys you once ignored. The softness of your breath, the warmth of the sun, the quietness of morning, the stillness of night, the depth of silence, the simplicity of existence. You begin appreciating life not for what it gives you, but for what it allows you to experience. This is the beginning of spiritual maturity, when joy no longer depends on conditions, and peace no longer depends on perfection. The purpose of these lessons was never to eliminate all suffering. Suffering is a natural part of human existence. Pain will still come, uncertainty will still arise, people will still change, challenges will still test you. But the difference now is that you will not collapse under them. You will not drown in your thoughts. You will not suffocate under your own expectations. You have learned how to breathe through discomfort, how to create space between emotion and action, how to observe instead of absorb, how to respond instead of react, how to let go instead of cling, how to trust instead of control. You have learned how to meet life with an open heart instead of a closed mind. This is the meaning of true inner peace, not the absence of storms, but the ability to stand calmly in the center of them, not the absence of fear, but the strength to face it, not the absence of problems, but the wisdom to meet them with clarity, not the absence of change, but the grace to flow with it. Peace is not a destination, it is a way of traveling. It is the energy you bring to every moment, not the moment itself. If there is one message you take with you from this entire journey, let it be this: life becomes peaceful the moment you stop arguing with it and start flowing with it. The moment you stop attaching your happiness to outcomes and start grounding it in presence. The moment you stop treating the mind as truth and start seeing it as a tool. The moment you stop fighting emotions and start listening to them. The moment you stop controlling and start trusting. The moment you stop overthinking and start living. Your peaceful mind is not somewhere far away. It is right here, beneath the noise. It is the quiet awareness watching everything. It is the gentle presence behind every thought. It is the stillness beneath every emotion. It is the sky behind every storm. That peaceful awareness is you, the real you. The you that cannot be touched by fear, broken by loss, shaken by life, or defined by circumstances. You are the observer, not the thoughts. You are the awareness, not the emotions. You are the sky, not the clouds. You are the ocean, not the waves. You are the presence, not the story. And when you finally recognize this, you are free. As you move forward from here, carry these lessons not as information but as practice. Return to your breath. Return to your awareness. Return to your inner stillness. Return to the present moment. Return to yourself, again and again, until peace becomes your natural state and not something you must chase. The journey does not end here. It begins here. Every moment is now an opportunity to choose awareness over overthinking, presence over fear, compassion over judgment, letting go over clinging, breathing over panicking, responding over reacting, peace over chaos. You are not the same person who started this journey. Your mind is softer. Your heart is clearer. Your awareness is deeper. Your presence is stronger. Your life, from this moment on, will not be lived unconsciously. You now have the tools, the wisdom, and the inner strength to walk through anything with peace. And the most beautiful truth of all, the peace you seek is already within you, and now you know how to access it. This is the beginning of your new life. A life not controlled by fear, not shaped by overthinking, not bound by the past, not shaken by uncertainty, but guided by awareness, grounded in stillness, and lived with an open, peaceful heart. You are finally free to live.